Yesterday we heard some amazing talks on research done in, I think, Japan, Jordan, Senegal, and Israel. So it'll be sad if we don't hear anything from China this year. So I'll be the person to do that. My research is on, this past summer has been on public transit and travel behavior in Beijing, China. This is Beijing, by the way. Looks pretty cool. So I'm just going to skip through this very fast. A little bit of background. Beijing is China's capital and second largest city. The population is 21 million, which is almost similar to the New York metropolitan area. And by itself, Beijing can be considered a middle-income country alone. Living standards have vastly improved over the years. I would say living standards there aren't that much different from here. So that's just a bit of background. From 2011 to 2010, the population exploded. It grew 42%, but incomes grew even faster. Incomes grew around 151% over the past 10 years. But the problem here really is the number of cars owned by citizens grew even faster, almost threefold over 10 years. So this has brought a huge burden to the city's road network, and traffic congestion has become one of the biggest problems in Beijing. As you know, Beijing is a very polluted city, and traffic congestion is one of the main reasons that's causing pollution. So to combat traffic congestion, in 2007, the city reformed public transit in order to attract more transit riders from cars. What the government did was, through government subsidies, bus and subway fares were cut as around 50 to 80%. For example, if you were to take a bus in 2005, it would cost two Chinese yuan. Right now, it only costs around 40 cents. 40 cents Chinese yuan is around 5 cents in US dollars, and this has been unchanged since 2007, so for 7 years. The reform I'm describing here was very effective in the beginning. This is sort of what happened back in 2007. So public transit ridership increased substantially from this reform. Although the first picture here is sort of an exaggeration of what happened. But you can get a sense that public transit became very, very crowded and very, very uncomfortable. So another thing that happened was because transit fares became so low, it seems that transit agencies have lost the incentive to provide high-quality service. So there were many complaints of the lack of air conditioning on buses, even though buses and subways became so crowded. This was because transit agencies wanted to minimize fuel and electricity costs because they weren't making any money from fares at all. So I'm going to talk about my research. First of all, the biggest problem after the 2007 reform was actually that most new transit passengers from the last picture were mostly cyclists and pedestrians. So they weren't car owners. So it seems that the government reform in 2007 didn't largely achieve its purpose of reducing cars on the road. The picture on the right is supposed to be funny, by the way. So why is this? Why didn't car owners switch to public transit even though fares were lowered so much? Well, literature suggests that price is only one of many, many factors that affect how people travel. So the factors here on the right are listed as coverage, comfort, time, reliability, convenience, and courtesy. So all of these factors each of these factors are no less important than price. And especially for people with higher incomes, they care more about factors on the right rather than price. And people with higher incomes are the people who generally own cars. So instead of price, the factors on the right side should not be ignored, and they might be even more important for reducing cars on the road. The government does travel surveys now and then, from time to time, and other scholars as well have tried to decipher how transit demand is determined. Right? So usually researchers look at factors such as price, time, and distance, because these factors are easy to quantify. But what is hard to quantify and is often omitted in research is the measure of comfort. Because usually you can't measure how comfortable is the bus, is the subway. It's very subjective, sorry. Excuse me. So what I'm doing here is I try to include the measure of comfort. As I just mentioned above, two factors are very important in Beijing right now. One is how crowded are buses and subways. The second factor is the level of air conditioning on buses and subways. These two factors are probably the most important measures of comfort, and I think these are actually viable ways to allow me to quantify the level of comfort on public transit. And so this will be the main innovation of my research compared to normal transportation research, which only includes factors of price, time, and distance. With this framework in mind, I conducted an intercept survey in Beijing to understand how these factors interact to affect travel demand, with a focus on transit demand. Right. So the survey targeted regular Beijing residents, and first of all, it included the usual suspects of transportation research, namely travel info and demographic info. So time, distance, gender, age, income, education. But what I also included was, that's usually not included in research, is I took a step forward to collect data and measure comfort. So we asked people, how crowded usually are buses and subways when they take them, and second, how sufficient was air conditioning on board. So these can be quantified by measuring the number of people per square meter standing on the bus or subways, and also by measuring what were passengers' perceived temperatures on board. So this can be quantified in this way. All right, so we innovated further by including a hypothetical game in each of the surveys. This is a sample game card. I'm going to go pretty fast here. For example, each survey includes 6 of these different game cards. Each game card has different variables, which are travel time, cost, air conditioning status, and crowdedness. So, for example, here you would be required to choose which is your most preferred travel mode out of bus, subway, car, and bike. And then with a large enough sample size, we'll be able to know how each of these factors affect how people choose how to travel. So these are the results. The survey was done at 8 different commercial districts in Beijing. The total sample size was 813. 11 student survey workers were recruited in Beijing. So preliminary results from our survey, we saw that we confirmed that people mostly complain about long travel time, unreliable service, and the fact that transit is usually uncomfortable. So this is really reassuring because it shows that what we're doing here actually matters. And then the hypothetical game results from that show that crowdedness and air conditioning levels do affect how people travel. So that was confirmed because each game had a pretty different result. And so last but not least, results vary over people's different travel characteristics, demographics, personal attitudes. This includes time, transit availability, distance, gender, income, education, and questions such as do you like taking transit in general? So personal attitudes and preferences. So this is just an example of the data. You can show that the more crowded, the higher temperatures are on the transit, the lower in general is passenger satisfaction. So the further question now would be to show whether how passenger satisfaction relates to whether people are willing to switch from cars to public transit or not. I can't show this right now because data is pretty messy, as you know, and we're trying to clean this data right now. This is the part where people describe their travel information. Where do they go, what time do they travel, how many days a month, and how much it costs. This data is a bit messy, so we're trying to go through it as fast as possible. But I hope I gave you a sense of what this is about, and I expect that the results should show that the level of crowdedness and air conditioning can really affect how people choose to travel. And in the future, it might even affect whether they want to buy a car or not. Well, I think they might be useful. So, in the end, I want to thank my mentor, Professor Kamala, and thank you to Crystal, Leah, and Eric, and also my 11 student assistants here. I think one of my assistants is actually here. Ting Yi, are you here? Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Is anyone else here? No? Okay. He's a Berkeley transfer student, so pretty cool. So thank you.
So thank you, Diwen. We have a 4-minute Q&A session now, so go ahead and yes.
In the beginning, you talked about that it was mostly passengers and cyclists that used the public transit system. Did you find that, or was that some?
That was shown in government data. I didn't put it in the slides, so sorry. Yes, it was shown.
Who did you give the surveys to? Like, how did you collect the data?
The survey was supposed to be a random survey. We did it in big shopping malls where people usually rest. Because usually the government survey sample size would be around like tens of thousands of people. Our survey size is only 800, so it could be biased in some way, but we tried our best to randomize our selection of respondents. Thanks.
Were air conditioning and comfort levels before the price decrease wasn't stated?